just to give us, a bit of where we are right now. Kind of how it was last year, where it felt like the early part of the year, things didn't seem to, as far as films are concerned, it didn't seem very much to talk about. But I will say, I think we're a little bit better now, especially in comparison to last year. I think at this point last year, all I really cared about was like Furiosa, Dune Part 2, and Challengers. And that's about it. And whereas right now in 2025, there are a fair bit of titles I can like name and throw out you that I really have liked. I will say, and I think really all the films that are out right now. I think it's funny because one of the things I wanted to talk about first was this article in World of Real, which hit or miss depending on like their track record, but I think it's an editorial or a report of some sort, but. There are always people who are dooming and glooming about, like, things collapsing. And I will say this. I don't think anybody more than me was dooming and glooming last year when it came to how the lazy Disney efforts were dominating everything. How Inside Out 2 became the biggest animated movie of all time. I was the one that was beating the drum, this is bad. While everybody else was like, money, 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 I love it. That's how I am. The same thing with Deadpool and Wolverine, when I'm like, and I know we don't feel the same way about the movie, but I do feel it's like, it should have been a lot better than what it was, but still, that, like nothing, what Marvel curse? That made all the money as long as they had the right names in the title of the movie. And then, of course, Moana 2 happened, made $1 billion. Then, of course, last month, Lilo and Stitch happened, made $1 billion. And it didn't, and, last time we were with Peter, he kind of, like, put it together in a way that I couldn't have vocalized myself, but the upcoming Mandalorian and Grogu movie is also in the same realm, or the same genre, because this is Disney taking all of its Disney Plus projects and then just putting it in theaters because they realized, oh my god, we can't make any money out of streaming. But you know what? Even though we don't really know how to make movies, and we purposefully kind of made these movies to be kind of cheap, we're going to go ahead and put them in the theaters because people are going to be none the wiser. And they were right, because people still showed up. And I don't know. I think the quality speaks for itself. Inside Out 2, no one talks about that movie ever. Moana 2, no one talks about that movie ever. Lilo and Stitch, well, we were talking about it for all the wrong reasons. And now it's just kind of like,
yeah.
So for however much the industry right now wants to talk about how, oh my God, Elio, what a miserable failure. Will original movies ever be okay? Is Pixar collapsing? Is this the end of original story? Yeah, it seems a silly conversation, I will say. We're going to talk about that for sure. But it just seems a little bit silly in comparison to everything else happening, where it's like, yeah, these other movies make money, but they're not really movies, are they? If they can't really sustain the conversation, if they can't really kind of like penetrate the consciousness. And it's not necessarily doing that at all. And I don't know how much this How to Train Your Dragon would be doing it, that same way as well. I mean, earlier this year, there were all of these stories about how the Snow White live action remake didn't do very well. And then the takeaway is, are Disney live action remakes not making any money? Only for 2 months later to the whole thing just, and then do you see how dumb it is? How I'm so sorry, but I have to say it again and again, that the people who are in control of the narrative and who have the power to kind of drive what we're talking about far too often show no accountability for how wrong they are as far as like what they want us to be discussing. We told you 2 or 3 months ago when it happened back in March that no, it failed because, well, I think the bad press had a lot to do with it. And I mean, years worth of bad press definitely dinged it. And I'm not even saying Rachel Zegler. Yeah. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying all the other crap. But more likely, Snow White is a movie that came out in the 1930s, and I don't think the kids these days care for a film that old. Yeah. You can barely bother to care about movies that are as old as the 80s or 90s, much less the 30s.
Mm.
So if you're looking for a reason for why it didn't do well, there you go. Do you know why How to Train Your Dragon and Lilo and Stitch are doing better? Because they were made this century.
Yeah. Peter,
It's like,
I mean, look, for the whole Rachel Zegler thing, anyone who says that she was the main reason or the biggest reason why it bombed, just wrong. She had very, very little to do with for it bombing. Peter pointed out when we talked about it before, but the reason why Lilo and Stitch is going to be more successful is because that movie came out when we were kids, and now what are people our age doing? They're having families of their own. They got money of their own. They can go there. They want to relive their childhood, or they want to relive the childhood with their kids and all that. And that was why it's becoming so successful. And mind you, not only did it come out in our childhood, but it was a big part of our childhood with the sequels and the animated show. Snow White didn't have any of that. Okay? It was just a one movie, and Lilo and Stitch really proves that nobody actually loves Snow White movie. I'm sure there's a lot of people there that loved it, and maybe those are the ones that went to go see it. That
if
made the
Peter were here,
million.
He'd rip you to shreds because he'd be like, "I loved it."
I think he would agree. I mean, I corrected myself by saying like, okay, maybe there is a huge amount of people that loved it, and maybe those were the ones that went and saw it that made the $200 million and all that. But more than anything, though, I think a huge chunk of people just appreciate the movie, and
yeah.
But like Lilo and Stitch proves it, though. It's like no one really loves the movie because I thought we were all in agreement here that if you disrespect the source material, that that your movie's gonna bomb or something. And then and everyone was going in on Rachel Zegler, going like, "Hey, she's the one that this is like, she has no respect for the original movie. Like, how dare she? Blah blah blah." Meanwhile, Lilo and Stitch comes out and it just completely derails from what the source material was. And I don't mean like plot wise. I'm talking about like
it destroys it. It destroys it beyond compare. It's like, are you kidding me?
And you can't say it's like, oh well, maybe a lot of people didn't know. It's like, no. The first weekend it came out, it made $300 million. That's expected, fine. But a whole bunch of TikToks were coming out going, "I do not watch this movie. It's this completely." It completely destroys the meaning of Ohana and all that. Like, people are making a whole bunch of TikToks just trashing the movie. And then what happened the next weekend? It made another $300 million. It's like, okay, nobody cared. Nobody actually cared about what Rachel Zegler was saying in those press conferences. Press tours, sorry. They just saw a lot of people hating on her. They wanted to ride that train. They wanted to get the views. That's all you're seeing on TikTok and on YouTube. It's just people wanting to get behind that, hopefully getting views. And that's it. But nobody actually fucking cared what she was saying. And,
it's funny because I know, but we have to just keep beating this drum because Rachel Zegler continues to be somebody who is just persecuted for existing. Like she's doing this play on I believe off Broadway or on Broadway. I don't know where she's at right now, but she's doing this play, and the New York Post or some outlet ran this headline, which was clearly just clickbait of like, "She's not in the balcony. Did she influence this? Is she ruining something else?" And it's like, she's not singing by the balcony. This is the most non-story ever. So it's like, you already know there is a bias, and you didn't already know Disney really played their hands when the movie came out. So it's like they backed off on that because of how blatant it was.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say it's like, it's funny because like there are other examples you can like name and point to recently, as you were saying, where the new people who are brought in to reimagine these older stories are just flat out like being arrogant and like pushing back on the criticism. Like, I was actually pretty surprised. Like, I don't know I think it was about a month ago at this point, but Dean Fleischerkamp, who is the director that is most known for Marcel the Shell with Shoes On, the A24 film. Of course, they wanted him to do the Lilo and Stitch remake. And look, I can sympathize with any creative that's trying to make something out of a live action remake because you kind of are dealt a pretty bad hand to begin with. But I do feel like he really struck the wrong tone when he couldn't just leave well enough alone. I think he went out of his way to respond to a lot of the criticisms of Lilo and Stitch, which we did discuss previously about, like, well, the biggest thing is you destroy the whole meaning of the movie. Ohana means family, nobody gets left behind or forgotten, and he completely just destroys that. And I don't really want to read his like statement, but it was just tone deaf the way that he was responding to it. Like, if he wanted to make, he was basically saying that he didn't want to remake the original. Dude, what do you think they hired you to do?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not defending Disney. No, I would like somebody, but I mean, but don't act as if you were trying to, because it's still a shot-for-shot remake. Don't, and the things that you do change, break the story. And then also, no one's talking about how the fact that was a Disney Plus. Hush, it was a Disney Plus project, but then they put it on theaters.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it was like, it had a cheap budget because of that. If anybody is wondering. Otherwise, it would have been like 200 million plus or whatever. But yeah, that was pretty arrogant. And then, of course, no one mentions the way that Rob Marshall or even Halle Bailey were like saying some really tone-deaf things that about The Little Mermaid. And how it was not, I mean, again, you want to talk about, like, if you want to be that person about the original source material, hey, if you know anything about Howard Ashman or how the creation of The Little Mermaid, and then you listen to Rob Marshall and Halle Bailey talk about what they thought. Again, so it was just that whole thing was a mess to begin with. But for the most part, what I was trying to say is, if you go to the movies right now, there's a lot of really interesting stuff playing. You know, all the movies that we mentioned now, of course, some of those are bombing and they're not going to be in theaters very long. But hey, if you go to the movies, you can see Alio, Life of Chuck, Materialists, The Phoenician Scheme by Wes Anderson, which I was hoping to discuss now, but Peter's not here and he saw it with me. I really liked The Phoenician Scheme. Benicio del Toro and Thruppleton, they were incredible, and I recommend that movie. To me, it was like good Wes Anderson. You also have some interesting, like, we mentioned The Ballerina. We also mentioned right now, opening in theaters this week is Megan 2.0, which looks bonkers and crazy as hell, but I'm sure people are going to go and see it. I believe there was like, there's the current Karate Kid movie with Jackie Chan and Ralph Macchio is also playing in theaters. Of course, Lilo and Stitch, How to Train Your Dragon. So it's like, look, I think right now it's a really interesting time to be there. I think some theaters in San Diego, where we're at, they're still playing Sinners, which that should tell you. And Sinners has been on digital for a while already. So that should tell you how much of a hit that movie has become. And very happy to see an original film be that successful when we're so used to them not being successful, because people are like, you know, there's a reason why the marketing for Materialists, I'm going to put it to you that way, why they were saying it's a fun, happy rom-com. Because if we told you what it was, you wouldn't see it. And then, of course, people like to bitch about marketing this and marketing that. And yes, we'll get into the lack of marketing when it comes to Elio. Don't be that person that says, well, I didn't know it was coming out. Well, they didn't market it properly. Because I get the feeling that a lot of people just say that as an excuse to not see the movie. If you're saying, oh, but the marketing was bad, you now know the movie's out there. Are you going to watch it? Or are you going to say, but the marketing was bad, to shield you from having to actually go and watch the movie? Mm-hmm. And I think ultimately, there's a lot to be said about the fact that there are many people who have for years said again and again online, where are all the original stories? And we've been saying it for years and years, to get fucked. Because whenever they come out in theaters, you tell the films to go fuck off. Meanwhile, how many times did I stand this past week at the box office to go see Elio, when everybody else around me, 3 tickets for How to Train Your Dragon, or 2 tickets for Lilo and Stitch. Mm-hmm. Both films, mind you, that you could go and watch on your TV right now and have a better experience than you ever would have hoped to have with those knockoff, copycat versions. Anyway, it was a bit of a rant, but the point of beginning the show this way was to just say, like, there's always going to be a time where we're going to be told by the elites, doom and gloom, sky is falling, And there's a reason for that. This week, there's an article that was basically saying, don't blame the executives. This was a Wall Street analyst. And of course, I want you to understand, Wall Street analysts are not people who you should take seriously. They, for instance, probably were trying to get New York City to vote for a 16-time accused sexual harasser to be put back in office over a 33-year-old Muslim Democratic Socialist who was actually trying to give you affordable things. So do not trust Wall Street insiders, and do not trust them to have the mentality for how to actually guide anything, because really what they do is they shield the people in power and they put the blame on you. In the article, this Wall Street analyst was saying about Elio not doing well at the box office. Don't blame the executives. It's the audience's fault. And hey, I'm not saying there isn't a kernel of truth in there, but I think it is very, very cowardice or cowardly and disingenuous to say that the executives don't or should not bear any responsibility for the film not performing well, especially when, like, isn't the executive's job in a movie knowing how to market it? That way that people can actually watch the movie?
How to market it, how to figure out to get the most success out of a movie. For example, Snow White shouldn't have been a $300 million budget movie. It should have been $90 million, and with that $200 million budget, would have made its money back. It would have gotten a success. So that's one thing. Marketing, I mean, there's yes, it's both sides. It's the audience, but also the executives. For one thing, though, like the idea of like, oh, I didn't know about this movie. That's iffy to me, because it's like you have social media. If you're following a Disney account, whether it's a fan account, whether it's the actual studio or something, or the actual Pixar studio account, like you're gonna see that this movie is gonna be coming out soon. So you should have known about this. Now,
yes,
as to how the trailer, as to how the trailer,
sorry.
As to how the trailer looked and all that, how some of the other, short little trailers were coming out and everything. Yeah, that's mostly from the executive's fault. They should have figured out a way to, really get the most out of your audience. Another example, Elemental. When that trailer came out, we had us Pixar, big Disney fans, we had zero interest in Elemental because we thought it was just going to be like the most generic story ever. And then we watched the movie, we were like, wait a minute, there was more to this than just what you were showing in the trailer. Like, why didn't you show this? Why didn't you get my attention through that? And then I truly believe this because of this whole go woke, go broke thing, that they were like, oh, if we market it as this movie as it's supposed to be a
as generically as possible,
yeah, then we should be fine. But no, that's bullshit. If you had marketed this as it was intended, it was just like an immigration story, like this whole generational trauma story, that would have gotten people's attention. Like, oh, hey, this is something different, but
it's not an Elio problem. It's not an Elemental problem. It's not an original movie problem. I will tell you this: as far as marketing and trailers are concerned, when was the last time you were really blown away by a trailer out of a Pixar movie? Ask yourself this question, because I argue, and we have said this many times. We were saying this back in the days of like Toy Story 4, Cars 3, back then when we were like getting the show up and running and we were in the midst of all of those Disney Pixar sequels, I should say. I'm going to make a statement here. I don't think there's ever been an amazing Pixar trailer.
I mean, actually, you mentioned...
I don't think there's been one. And I'm not saying like there haven't been good trailers. I'm saying, like, is there really a trailer that has, like, really been, like, amazing for any of them? Like, but I can point to you, the trailers for most of their movies are not just not good, they're quite poor. You can put Elemental, you can put Elio, you can put Toy Story 4. Those trailers are not great. Ironically enough, maybe The Incredibles 2 trailers are maybe among their better ones. And that really wasn't that good of a movie to begin with. But like, I don't think Pixar trailers are not really kind of like trailers. They're more of just kind of, especially in the time that we have been covering them, which would be 2015 and on. They're mostly just kind of like announcement trailers, and they throw out ideas, but like, they've been banking. Inside Out probably got to be as big as it was, $1 billion grosser, not because the trailers for Inside Out were great, but because, and I mean the first one from 10 years ago, but because people trusted Pixar. And in 2015, Pixar still had the glow of their like masterpiece era, where every original movie that came out was just hitting and hitting and hitting. Now, people want to say, oh, how the mighty have fallen. They've been putting out bad movies. That's not what it is at all. But it's like people and the audiences are just much more picky. And I think the big thing is, look, the point that I'm trying to make here is like their trailers have never been good to begin with. I think they've been coasting off of their name for over 10 to 15 years now. That's what it is, really. Mm-hmm. And now, if you want to be like really specific about why audiences, in particular to Pixar, are not going to go and give their originals a chance, like Elemental or Elio, is because Luca, Turning Red, Soul, and Onward, really for the most part, were put on Disney Plus. 4 Pixar movies in a row were put on Disney Plus during COVID, and they just got used to having original Pixar films at home. And now we're in this era in which people are like, yeah, but is that movie screen worthy? Is it theater worthy to go? Like, and that, quite frankly, disgusts me, because I think every movie that is made theatrically is supposed to be seen theatrically. I think you lose something in the experience if you watch it at home versus if you watch it in the theater. And I can tell you, as somebody who loved Luca and Turning Red at home, when last year I had the chance to go watch it in theaters, I did. And it blew me away, more so than it already did at home. It makes for a big impact, but people at large don't have that same mentality. And I would also argue they maybe just have like stopped caring because of, soaring prices and the soaring cost of living that our politicians have failed to address. The right-leaning politicians are happy that it's happening, and they will continue to enforce policies that will crush us, economically speaking. And the left are not really left. They're also bought off by those same Wall Street analysts, those consultants, and we are where we are because it's not getting any better. And it won't get any better. And so I can understand that for 10 plus years now, when you think about the kind of audiences that would go see the Pixar film or a Disney animated movie, they maybe see 4 movies a year, maybe 1 movie a month. That's how it used to be. And this is what happens when the cost to go to a movie increases and the cost of living continues to increase, and nothing is being done about it. The politicians are not doing anything at all to give you more money in your pocket or more of an income, the same way as the exhibitors are really not having any kind of real soul searching into how to improve the quality of their theaters or how to get you to spend more money. Instead, all they do is they jack up the prices on everything that you already paid for. And then their latest and brightest idea was to add even more ads to the 25 minutes of trailers that play already before your movie. And mind you, we're living in an era in which, there are many people who are now only just now saying, wow, the movie poster or just the average movie studio movie poster has just like really become dog shit, hasn't it? It's been that way for 10 years now. What do you mean it's just barely you're noticing it? What's happening right now is the average movie studio trailer is becoming quite dog shit, and it kind of like abrasive to actually be put in. It's like you might as well just put pornography in my face, because that might be more preferable than that trailer that is like nothing and the most boring, useless thing ever. I'm not saying, by the way, put pornography in my face. I want to be clear about that. I'm making a rather crass comparison because I think most movie trailers these days are quite garbage. And when you're already facing that, plus you're adding more ads, that's not going to attract any people into the theater. So I'm going to say to you right now, it's like I can understand where things are. It's not a one ish. It's not one thing that you can point to, David. I know you know this, but I'm just putting it out to the audience. It's not just one thing. It's not two things. It's like 5-10 different things happening at the exact same time that have been going on that have led us to this. I haven't even mentioned. Well, I did mention Disney and putting it on streaming, but just streaming overall has just like exacerbated all of these things, as we have been saying. So that's our lead in. There's two things. I was going to read World of Real, but I want to play Megan Cruz here, Jay Stoops. That's her at TikTok. She's incredible. I've played her clips before. I wanted to play her because she's the one that's speaking to the article that was written by, I believe, Dade Hayes. I believe this is Deadline. This is the headline. Elio misfire could hasten demise of original animation. Wall Street analyst says, but don't blame film executives, blame the audience. So she's speaking to this exact thing that I was just saying. I'm going to go ahead and play it right now. And let's see where we're at with this one.
Absolutely terrible news for fans of original animation. Elio is officially Pixar's lowest opening weekend in all of Pixar's 30-year history making movies. Elio only made $21 million at the domestic box office, $34 million globally, which is an insanely low number. Obviously, this is a huge conversation, and film executives, journalists, anyone who really keeps an eye on the media and film landscape is going to be taking note of this, because this absolutely follows along with trends we have been seeing for many years now, that audiences are definitely choosing IP that's established. There's a definite lack of curiosity amongst general audiences that I've talked about that I really despise. But this article, I think, has a really kind of sensationalist headline. It says, don't blame film execs, blame the audience. There's definitely a degree of personal accountability here of, again, audiences being deeply uncurious and just going for whatever is most easily served to them upon a platter. But I also think that this is conditioning. Like, I think it's very naive to act as though this is like audiences are just suddenly turning against original content and that they haven't been conditioned for the last 15 years of like the MCUification of cinema. Like this huge, this idea that the films that are most worthy of your time in a theater are these giant IP, event films. And I feel like the cinematic experience has been just generally devalued, and that's not, again, that's multiple factors. That's still longstanding effects from COVID and everything. But this is genuinely like a multifaceted problem that is not going away anytime soon. And it's really genuinely very sad to me as someone who deeply loved this movie, Elio. I think, again, I've talked about how much I really don't like Rotten Tomatoes. I think the Rotten Tomatoes score for this movie is currently sitting at 84%. And again, it's like we created this culture that has just devalued the entire concept of like an individualistic approach to art. Like, okay, generally more-ish people said that they liked Elio than didn't, and so the number, like its value is flattened to 84%. I think this movie's incredible. Many critics thought it was good to great, but you don't get that from a Rotten Tomatoes score. You just get a middling idea, like a general number, which is bullshit, frankly. But I also think that, again, with the sensationalism here, it's not as though audiences are resoundingly choosing IP in this case. Like, How to Train Your Dragon did have a strong start opening weekend, but second weekend, their numbers fell by 57%. That's a huge drop-off. The numbers are nowhere near as big as they were for Inside Out 2 last year. Like, I genuinely think that people, again, like, we've devalued the entire idea of going to the theater, and this is a problem that is much bigger than just this one individual instance, no matter how sad this individual instance makes me. But I will say again, for the record, I love this movie. It deeply touched me, maybe probably like 5 times. If you want to watch my review, it is on my page. I highly recommend seeing it and supporting original stories in animation, because what else can we do?
Yeah, and I will say, I think she brings up a great point when it comes to the issue of conditioning. We are where we are because that is what the studios have been offering us for 10 plus years now. It used to be the studios were offering all kinds of movies in theaters, like the 2000s. Mm-hmm. And then when streaming came along, it was somehow just decided. Like, again, we can say that audiences now only want certain stories on the big screen and then everything else on streaming. Where did it come from? Because out of nowhere, studios were making those decisions themselves. This also correlates with the ballooning budgets of blockbusters. Like, as you were saying, there was no need for any Snow White movie to be over $90 million. Now, I will say, there are exceptions. Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny was like over 300 million because of COVID. They had to stop and restart. The same thing with Mission Impossible, the Last Reckoning, not this one, but the one before that, the Dead Reckoning. Those are fine. There are even instances where budgets have ballooned because they had to scrap everything and do it all over again, like Elio. That budget ballooned and was not going to be anywhere near as high as it is right now because of the issue that happened. So they had to save it, which is, by the way, something that Marvel did on the regular for, I think it felt like 10 straight movies in a row. Again, so the ballooning costs of budgets can be directly linked to studios making those decisions because they made the judgment call that audiences should only want those kind of movies in theaters. Whereas we're going to use our streaming platform to put these other smaller titles, smaller, quote unquote. It's that thing. I hate using I hate, saying bigger movies and smaller movies because it goes back to the whole, calling films of a certain budget or of a certain genre indie films. How Martin Scorsese, I don't like when they're called indie movies and all that kind of stuff. So it goes back to that. And I think it goes back to what James Gray said. It's like the studios have to force it back. They simply have to force it back. And I'll say this is about conditioning. If we live in a world in which there are millions of people out there that can be persuaded by money interests to vote against democratic socialists, to vote against progressive candidates, and I'm being serious. They're convinced to do this because of all the money being poured in through mailers and ads on TV. If they can make you believe that, then surely with your combined resources, you can be able to run a campaign to recondition audiences back and expect movies like Materialists to come back in theaters. And expect movies like The Life of Chuck, which also isn't doing at all well in theaters. Of course, that wouldn't happen. But supposedly these are the people who have the most capital, that have the most power. And you're telling me you don't have it within you to condition audiences back in the other direction? Especially when, by the way, the cat's kind of out of the bag. It's been, and everybody kind of knows it, there's no money in streaming.
Mm-hmm.
You shit the bed hard on that. And what are you doing about that? What are you doing about that? And then also, blaming the marketing or lack thereof of marketing is a very lazy excuse. And I will say, it is also, I think, lazy on the part of the executives themselves. Prove your worth. You're trying to get a whole bunch of working class people replaced with AI because you're saying that AI can do their job better than they can. Why don't we replace you with AI? Yeah, movie executives, because you are doing a pretty shit job at that. I mean, David and I and Peter, I think amongst us, we could have come up with many more creative ways to market Elio. Elio is a film about a boy that goes into space, aliens. Gee, I wonder if there was a Disney movie out in theaters at the exact same time that also dealt with a cute, lovable character that is from outer space. Oh, that's right, Stitch. You could, and by the way, you've been using Stitch. One of the ways that you marketed Lilo and Stitch the first time around was actually quite brilliant. The second time you did the exact same thing, but it was more disgusting because there was this disgusting poster with Stitch and a lightsaber and the Infinity Gauntlet and the 20th Century Fox logo. That was disgusting. But again, it worked. So you couldn't have Stitch pop in to the Elio trailers or vice versa. Mm-hmm. Or Stitch is insanely marketable. You couldn't have used him to help out Elio? You're telling me no one who you pay millions of dollars, mind you, could have come up with that idea? Let me go ahead, and this is the headline from World of Real. Report. Most exhibition executives believe moviegoing has less than 20 years left. The data came out of a survey by industry analyst Stephen Follows in collaboration with Screen Dollars. They reached out to nearly 250 executives across the American film sector. These are not smart people. Just want to put out there, yeah, these are not smart people. But okay, let's see what they have to say. That they work in exhibition, production, distribution, sales, television to take the pulse of where things stand post-COVID. They're cynical about the future. Over 60% of them also think that the clock is ticking fast. Interestingly, among all the groups surveyed, it's the exhibitors themselves who seem slightly more... Okay, the exhibitors. So let me just say here. So they... okay, so it wasn't just them. So this survey was through people working in exhibition as well as the production, distribution that would include the movie studios, sales, and television. Okay. So the exhibitors themselves seem slightly more optimistic than their peers about their industry. Follows doesn't frame the results as all doom and gloom. He leaves the door open to the idea that the model might evolve. Maybe the venues stay open, the business shifts, and what we call going to the movies just ends up looking different. But the through line is clear. Change is inevitable. One thing that should stand out, nearly 90% of all exhibitors say that they still haven't bounced back from pre-2020 revenue levels. Duh. 2020 wrecked the old rhythms of the business, and it turns out they're not easily rebuilt. I would also say it's like, hey, just call it out there. COVID, but also Disney Plus. I'm going to tell you right now, no streamer is more responsible for where theaters are at right now than Disney Plus. And I would also say HBO Max too. That whole day and date shit, you screwed the pooch, as Tony Stark would say. Don't just say since COVID. Put them on freaking blast. They helped COVID screw you. On top of that, 81% of the respondents said that they still want a theatrical exclusivity window of at least 45 days before. This is what I mean, and I want to make it very, very clear again to people who want to say, "Oh, it's the creatives at Pixar's fault," or something else. This is where we are. The answers are very, very easy for how to get out of this mess. The exclusivity theatrical window needs to be longer as it used to be. You cannot have a system in which the movies are playing in theaters one week and are at your home the next week. You have to stop that. You have to also take risks in making different kinds of movies how you were doing in the 90s and the 2000s. Because even when you make things that fail from a box office standpoint, they find an audience, and then years later, it turns out you have a franchise, like Lilo and Stitch. That movie wasn't a huge hit. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, reports have come out saying that you were trying to kill that project back in the 2000s. Take more risks, make more original films. Even if they fail, you have to have the mentality that even if you're not going to make any money, at some point, it's going to be paid in return in that maybe it becomes a franchise. And even if it doesn't, what you do is you create more of an awareness, more of a consciousness. This is what James Gray was saying. Even if movies fail, you are contributing to get people invested and back interested in the movies and going to the movies. That is going to pay you back tenfold. Also, bring down these ridiculous budgets. You do not have to make these movies be $200, $300 million, $150, $250. No, you don't have to do any of that. Like, these things we've been saying for a long time now. I would also just say, hey, get creatives back in control to make better movies, make better creative decisions, make better posters, make better trailers. I mean, just overall, think back to your long history. When the Hollywood system was decimated back in the 60s and the 70s, who did you bring in? We want to all blame George Lucas and Steven Spielberg for, ushering in the blockbuster and ruining movies. I don't know who wants to do that, but like, listen, it wasn't just them. It was Brian De Palma. It was Martin Scorsese. It was Francis Ford Coppola. They were in that same Rat Pack generation group, and they brought back different kinds. I mean, what happened in the 70s was incredible because they let people come in and revolutionize everything. Like ILM being created by George Lucas to help get Star Wars out there in the first place. That in and of itself is like, you put creative and talented people back in charge. That's what you have to do. You're not going to go anywhere. If you are being led by cravenous, capitalistic, disgusting creatures like David Zaslav and Bob Iger, who are not concerned about creativity. Their main idea of being creative is taking a low-budget, made-for-cheap streaming movie, putting it out in theaters, knowing you're going to shove it down your throat and thank them for it. Which most of you, by the way, if we're being honest, did just that. I will say, if we're holding out hope that audiences are going to save movies or are going to, out of nowhere, raise their standards, that's not going to happen. We have to realize that in this monoculture, the main consciousness is what the powers that be dictate it to be. I want to reiterate, if we live in a world in which the politicians and the donors and the executives get together to deem which politicians are able to be bankrolled, that way you think, because you watch TV, oh, that person's good. I'm going to vote for that person, but that person's bad, and I hate that person. If we're the same kind of population that can be so easily bamboozled and voting against their best interests, then maybe those same people can maybe, I don't know, get off their ass and think some good things to convince people to come back to the movies. But that won't happen, and that can't happen because we have to remind ourselves that the people who are in the driver's seat in this movie business are not the people who care about movies. David Zaslav has been at WB, and from day one, his main mission has been to sell it. Bob Iger has come back, and every day he's been back, he's made Disney worse for it. Pete Docter this past week was going out there and saying that, look, we have to keep making original films because no shit. But in that same quote, he was saying, you don't want us to make Toy Story 27. Pete, I'm sorry, but do you know who you work for? I think Bob Iger would actually beg to differ. I think if he had it his way, he'd make Toy Story 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And do that until the end of time. So look, I just want to make sure that people are clear. I don't know, realistically, if there's a way to move past the Bob Igers or the David Zaslavs of the world. But so long as they are in the driver's seat, don't expect anything to realistically change. But I would just ask people to, when we have situations like Elio bombing, we need to be aware of who are the real culprits. Who are the right people to shift the blame to? And when we have forces out there like those Wall Street analysts that say it's your fault, and I want to be clear, sometimes I'm going to be that bitch and say to you, yeah, it's your fault too. But when they say, oh, we need to shield the executives from any kind of blame. So, I think, David, we've been on this for maybe half an hour at this point. I just want to say, look, I think realistically, the movie business is going to be fine.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, things seem pretty great as far as like what's out there. I just feel like ultimately, as far as the big questions, the answers are very simple. But in particular, the studios who are controlled by executives that are not concerned about movies as they are about how they can get theirs more than anything else, and they do not come from the world of movies. They come from the world of corporations. Again, let's give a shout out to Ronald Reagan and the conservatives in the 1980s. that enacted their policies of deregulation, which allowed the corporations to come in here and purchase these studios in the first place. So we want to make sure that we give him his credit. Supposedly, these are the people who have earned the right to say they're the smartest people in the room because of the wealth and power that they wield. And yet, when the answers to fix this industry are so very simple, they're not going to do it. But again, what is the point of me saying this is I would hope that if anyone is listening, it would occur to them, these people aren't very smart. So don't listen to what they say. It's all bullshit and they lie to you all the time. Last year, Bob Iger was raving about how great the animation was coming out from Moana 2, not realizing that he was pretty much just saying out loud, we made this for cheap out of studio, and it came out so good that it's almost movie level. He was basically saying in translation, these idiots won't know the difference. I'm going to put it in theaters. And unfortunately, what I haven't said in all of this is because the studios have conditioned audiences to want one thing in theaters, there has also been by that same metric, or I should say by that same standard, a serious collapse in film and media literacy. That's the other component. So when you put all these things together, we have this powder keg of this kind of like out in the wilderness situation where we are with movies, where there's a lot of original films that don't have a chance and won't have a chance. And some will, just by a stroke of luck or some, I don't know, word of mouth or whatever. I mean, we've been saying it for a long time. But I just say it's like, I get frustrated every time, especially when in regards to Pixar. I think Pixar is a great studio. I think they continue to excel despite the fact that they are controlled by Bob Iger, who is the most uncreative person imaginable. I think they're doing the best that they can considering who they work for. I will put it to you at that. And I don't like it when people who do what we do and talk about the industry start with what went wrong with Pixar and frame the discussion about like, what can Pixar do to get audiences back? That's not the problem here. That's not really who has any say in what has happened, as we've been talking about. The discussion should be is what Disney and like, why is it that last year? Remember last year, Inside Out 2 came out. How many people were praising Bob Iger? There you go, Bob. You came back and we're going to praise Bob Iger every time Pixar has a success. But when they have a box office failure, we're going to go right back and blame Pete Docter. Wait a minute. Why are we? So when they win, it's Bob Iger's success. And he's the reason why it worked. But when they're not winning and they're cratering at the box office, Bob who? Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, Pete Docter's in charge of Pixar. Let's go ahead and blame him.
Oh yeah, anyone who ever just makes a claim that like, oh, this is the biggest reason or this is the main reason a movie fails, like, again, they're just wrong. There is, we just pointed out I don't know how many things of like why not just Elio, but like a lot of other movies are failing in the box office. There's so much going on to just make a movie that any one little thing can make it collapse. Whether it's, an actor or an actress not saying the right things during press tours and all that, or it's the executives not focusing on the budget or what the story should be or what they want the story to be or what kind of story they want to tell audiences. Same thing goes with writers and directors who are just not good at what they're doing. And yeah, there's like a whole bunch of other stuff. So this is why it also bothers me.
Was there anything else that I didn't mention? I'm sorry, go ahead, David. Was there anything else that I didn't touch on that you think are factors, as you were saying?
I think we hit on everything. I mean, we talked about the executives. I don't think we hit that much on like writers and... Well, actually, no. You brought up how the director for the Lilo and Stitch live action just kind of like... Dude, you fucked up. Come on.
I
That's all there is
also
to it.
I also was just saying overall, it's like just put talented people in charge, and I do feel no disrespect to some individuals, but there are so many people, especially at Disney, who have been put in charge of projects that had no business being put there.
Mm-hmm.
So
And this is something that
hire talented people.
yeah, and this is just something that more and more people are noticing, which is the ones who review movies that are like, they'll look at the name of people who worked on on some movie that just super super bad, and they'll have like 0 credits on their like either IMDb or on their Wikipedia, and it's like, why hire them in the first place, or or like, why hire them on something so big as the live action Lilo and Stitch or Snow White or anything like that? If you're gonna make something big, you better have like.
To be fair, those movies don't really need directors, do they?
I mean, not really,
I mean,
but
yeah.
either way, though, too. Like,
I
don't know.
You're right about that. I mean, let's just stop right here and think about, honestly, because I'm not sure. I try and have been trying throughout the many years that we've been doing this podcast, trying to emphasize that point that you're making right now. Years and years and years of just really, really questionable hires or hirees, right? So let's start with this one, right? So Daredevil, the reboot by Marvel Studios. Originally, they hired somebody whose last project was from 2010, and it was a USA cable show.
And that was supposed to be like, oh, hey, look, see, we're thinking about long form television shows now. Like that was kind of what they were hoping, but that's still not enough.
I mean, to speak of Marvel Studios, I mean, they keep trying and avoiding directors, like real auteur directors at all costs. How many times did they try and woo over Sean Levy to direct both Avengers movies? But it turns out it's okay. Sean Levy was attached to a Star Wars movie, which he also really has no credibility to be on at all.
Mm-hmm.
Look at Lucasfilm. They hired Josh Trank after Chronicle, but then Fan Forstic came out and they had to let him go. That project was canceled. Gareth Edwards. Visually, he's a great director. From the writing standpoint, he's not. So they had to bring in Tony Gilroy and make rewrites and somehow make it work. Benioff and Wise, who were getting all the credit for how successful Game of Thrones was, and then it turns out the last season came out and it pissed everybody off, and they weren't really all that thrilled. That also never came to be. Colin Trevorrow, Jesus Christ, Colin Trevorrow, just to make Jurassic World was fine, but he should not have been brought back to write the scripts for Fallen Kingdom or Dominion. Mm-hmm. Why would we want one person to be in charge of 3 Jurassic World movies? And by the way, each time he came back, those movies were made progressively worse. But at one point, that person was set to write Episode 9, Star Wars Episode 9. Then he was dismissed in favor of J.J. Abrams, who has admitted many times he does not do good endings. And that's the person you hire to do an ending. But it's okay. You give him a co-screenwriter, and that is Chris Terrio, who, yes, he won an Academy Award for writing Argo, but he also was the person who wrote the disastrous movies that sunk a whole 10 years worth of DC and Warner Brothers. You bring in Chris Terrio, who co-wrote Batman v Superman and Justice League, and pair him up with J.J. Abrams to write Star Wars Episode 9. By that same tone, you make Zack Snyder not only do a Superman in quotation marks movie with Man of Steel, but then you also bring him back to do Batman vs. Superman, and then the Justice League in 3 movies, one after the other, without thinking to yourself about what kind of a disaster that is to hand over an entire cinematic universe to one guy, especially that guy of all people? Suicide Squad? Who, again, maybe David Ayer made an okay movie, I don't know what it was, but you took away his movie and you made the decision, Warner Brother executives, to recut the entire movie based on how successful that trailer was. I mean, I could go on and on, but it's just like, those are the more notable examples in the time that you and I have been doing this, David, of just decisions that when you hear them, you're like, that's just a bad fucking idea. And then when they come out, you see?
And you know they're realizing that now because of that trailer for Thunderbolts, the one where they kept putting like people's names who were on A24 movies. They're like, see, if we tell the people here, it's like, hey, we got some talented people working on this movie. They'll come. It's like, okay, so you know that you need talented people working on your movies.
I think we talked about that when we reviewed Thunderbolts. It was kind of a joke. I mean, the directors, it was a joke of an idea, but then Kevin was like, okay, let's do it. So they went for it, and I think it got some people's attention, and good for the Thunderbolts. It was a real movie. Yeah. Hey, it was a movie.
It was a movie that we actually enjoyed. Came out kind of, smiling and everything. But, again, you're now realizing, oh, okay, you need talented people working on your movies, and you're not doing it because, you're going to have to pay them more and all that. I mean, just like, again, we don't care what the budget is on your movie, but, make it look good. Make it go, okay, yeah, this is worth this amount of money. Now, yeah, we would go if it looks great, story's great and all that. The ones who enjoy watching movies and all that. But if you want people to keep coming, you still need to do the other things, which is make sure the movie stays there longer than 45 days, market it well, better than what you did with Thunderbolts. I mean, yeah, like we said, it worked and all that, but you still need to do better. And then,
as you were saying, more names and examples came to mind. I mean, that Rick and Morty writer, Steven something, or what was his name? The guy that was the main writer for Loki, and then they also had him be the main writer for Multiverse of Madness. They were originally going to have him write Kang Dynasty. I forget his name, but there was that one guy, again, associating yourself with people who are not very talented. With Marvel Entertainment, they hired Scott Buck, who was most known for ruining the last couple of seasons of a show called Dexter. And they put him in charge of Iron Fist and then Inhumans. Talk about just disastrous decisions. I could keep going. I mean, the collaboration from hell that is Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni, that just continues to just prove that they're just not worth it. And then again, I mean, if you're Kathleen Kennedy and you saw what a complete mess the Ahsoka season was, at this point, Ahsoka really did, I'm sorry, it was like, the Emperor has no clothes. Like, Dave needs a lot of help. He needs a lot of work. Mm-hmm. And yet, what do? You greenlight a second season in which he is the sole writer again for every episode. What are we doing here? Mm-hmm. There's just this failing upwards mentality, and you can link that between, you fail upwards in Hollywood, you fail upwards in the politics arena and the Democratic Party. We're just rewarding not just bad behavior, we're rewarding mediocrity. Mediocrity would actually be a welcome return. We're rewarding people who are, quite frankly, among the worst writers imaginable. Again and again. And even, believe Kathleen Kennedy was mentioning that at Star Wars, they're also developing a trilogy with Simon Kinberg. Simon Kinberg, who wrote Fan Force Stick. Simon Kinberg, who wrote and directed Dark Phoenix from 2019, in case anybody forgot that was a movie. Simon Kinberg, who was also, I believe, credited with helping the screenplay for X-Men The Last Stand, which in that movie also had a Dark Phoenix storyline. The same person messed up the same storyline twice? And you bring him on to develop a new set of movies? Where the fuck is Ryan Johnson's trilogy? It ain't that hard. Bring him back and make those movies. Because he, unlike all of those people that I mentioned, is a gifted writer in everything he's done. And this, I mean, this happens also. It's like, it was announced earlier today that there's going to be a sequel for The Social Network, which I don't know why we need a Social Network 2, but Aaron Sorkin, who wrote the screenplay for the first one, is going to come back, but David Fincher, who directed the first one, is not, and instead, they're going to have Aaron Sorkin direct this. And Aaron Sorkin, his only experience with directing happens to be Being the Ricardos with Nicole Kidman and Javier Bardem, and then also The Trial of Chicago 7 with Sacha Baron Cohen and I believe Joseph Gordon-Levitt. And I believe Molly's Game with Jessica Chastain, which he's a great writer. Directing, I mean, you're going to give him The Social Network 2?
Yeah.
Which, again, I don't even know why there needs to be a Social Network 2. So that's just, you know, that's a little bit of a questionable decision. I'll just put it out there. But by that same metric, you know, and I want to bring this up. I know we have other things to get to, but it's like Gareth Edwards is also somebody who I enjoy Gareth Edwards because I do think he is a gifted individual when it comes to the screen. I want to put up this tweet that I saw earlier today by, I believe, Brendan Hodges, who I think really verbalized how I feel about Gareth Edwards. He said, and Gareth Edwards, just to be clear here, he is the credited director for Godzilla 2014, Rogue One, the creator from, I believe, was it last year or 2 years ago? I think it was October 23, I want to say. And then he is the upcoming director for Jurassic World Rebirth. Okay, so keep that in mind. This is what Brendan Hodges says about Gareth Edwards, who, by the way, I'm going to say he is a talented individual, but I think he also suffers from this mentality of being a writer-director. You don't have to do both. I think he's a really good director, but all of his movies, I believe, suffer in the writing department in which he has written. Take a clue, take a hint. And this is what Brendan says. Haven't seen the new dinosaur movie, but Gareth Edwards is one of the great visualists of his generation. All of his movies look like $1,000,000, and he's awesome at big screen scale. That I wonder what magic would happen if the man actually got a terrific script for once. Rogue One looks beautiful. That's Gareth Edwards. The creator, by the way, and the creator deserves a lot of respect. He made that movie look like $150 million. He made it for 80.
Yeah.
And I'm sure Jurassic World Rebirth, which is coming out soon, like I think next month.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's going to look great. But why do you have to be the person to write your own things? He continues, Brendan. Edwards takes a lot of jobs that were clearly in trouble before he signed on. He only did Jurassic after a bunch of bigger names passed, since they wanted more work on the script. Where other than the creator, he's never really had a full shot at success. Really feel like if Edwards finds the right collaborators, especially who are more gifted than he is at capturing human drama, since he's clearly such a big visuals guy, he just might be due for delivering. Look, collaborations are key. I think individually, there are people who have suffered. Dave Filoni has suffered without George Lucas. I'm going to put it to you plain and simple. George Lucas suffered without Dave Filoni. Those two worked well together. The Russo brothers, Joe and Anthony Russo, they've suffered incredibly without Kevin Feige and without Chris Marcus and Steve McFeely. When those three were together, they were pretty good.
Yeah.
Individually, all of those people have suffered on their own. Look at how great Tom Cruise and Christopher McQuarrie are together. They did like 3 or 4 Mission Impossibles plus Top Gun Maverick. Top Gun Maverick, by the way, was a success because of the collaboration of Chris McQuarrie and Tom Cruise. Now, Chris McQuarrie, creator, screenwriter, and producer, he deserves more credit for Maverick than the actual director Kaczynski, because Joseph Kaczynski, who's directing the F1 movie that comes out this week with Brad Pitt, I'm not sure is going to be received all that well. And I'll tell you what, neither is Top Gun 3 if he insists on doing that without Chris McQuarrie. It's pretty obvious that's what it is. Like, you have to admire the collaborations. So I don't understand why, and then again, this is why, for the last couple of years we've been talking about how like James Gunn's got so much hate because of the people he usually works with. Idiots. Every person in this business that has been able to forge their own path continues to use their same collaborators because it works. Look at, Steven Spielberg has his same, he's been working with John Williams for 50 years.
Yeah.
For God's sakes. Look at, he has his team. Scorsese has his team. He has the same editor, Thelma Schoonmaker, for 50 years. Like,
He uses
it
the same
works
actor.
when it works. I'm sorry?
He also uses the same actor.
Oh, yes, same actors. Robert De Niro has been in at least 8 or 9 of his movies. Wes Anderson always uses the same actors, for God's sake.
Same actors, but then also Emma Stone. How many movies has she been on with the guy who made... oh my gosh, I can't
Yorgos Lanthimos?
Yes.
Yeah, you think it was who made... He made Poor Things, and he also made... was it The Lobster, I want to say? No, not The Lobster. It was something else. But I think Yorgos Lanthimos. Maybe it was him. The Favorite. Yeah. The Favorite and Poor Things. And then there are also new collaborators meeting anew. Luca Guadagnino had a new collaboration this last year when it comes to Justin Kuritzky's, whose career is just starting. Justin Kuritzky is the husband of Celine Song. Celine Song, who has written and directed Materialists and Past Lives. Justin Kuritzky's wrote 2 screenplays for Luca Guadagnino. He wrote Challengers, and he also wrote Queer. This business and the people who succeed is dependent on people and who is on their team to work on their projects. It's just the way that it is. So, yeah, that should... I think we can wrap that part up now. I think that just gives people a general sense. I also will say Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni are not good working partners because they bring out the worst in each other from what I've been able to see. Because honestly, I liked Jon Favreau before The Mandalorian. I liked his movies. I liked Iron Man. I liked Chef. I liked Zathura. Cowboys and Aliens was like whatever, but it was it was still a watch. I just feel like ever since Mandalorian, but I hated Lion King. I should say that. That was awful. That was like one of the worst movies I've ever seen. Lion King, 2019, directed by Jon Favreau. To be clear. Not the 1994 masterpiece. Be clear before anybody else, throws their pitchforks out at me.